What if the world refused to believe in your brilliance? Ava Cole stood center stage in a buzzing San Francisco Tech Convention Hall, the lights blinding her but not enough to dim her determination. Her voice wavered only for a second before she launched into her pitch, her creation flickering behind her on a holographic screen. Imagine, she said, an artificial intelligence that doesn't just predict but understands, deeply, intuitively. One that bridges empathy with logic. I call it Vega. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some raised brows. Others whispered. She continued, her eyes darting between the flickering live analytics display and the tech elite seated in the first row. Vega learns emotional context, not just words. It can comfort a grieving child or advise a CEO. This isn't just AI. It's evolution. Then it happened. A sharp, exaggerated laugh rang out from the center row. A venture capitalist from Austin, known for brutal honesty and louder opinions, shook his head. She thinks she built a mind, he said, loud enough for others to hear. That's not genius, sweetheart. That's a glitchy chatbot with a wig. Laughter erupted. Not from everyone, but enough to feel like the entire room had turned against her. Ava froze. The sound, so sharp, so familiar, hit a part of her brain she hadn't felt in years. It was the sound she remembered from middle school when she solved a physics problem faster than the teacher and was called a freak. The same laugh that haunted her at 17 when she tried to apply for MIT with a homemade quantum computing paper stapled in her application. She gripped the mic tighter. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. The AV team awkwardly cut the presentation short. She walked off stage to silence, avoiding eye contact, her prototype folder still clenched in her hand. Backstage, an intern tried to comfort her with a bottled water and a weak smile. She declined. Her hands shook. That laughter was going to replay in her head for weeks. Months. Maybe forever. Outside, the night air slapped her in the face. She didn't wait for a lift, just started walking. Her boots echoed on the pavement, drowning out the thoughts bouncing violently inside her skull. They didn't even let her finish. She'd spent 4 years building Vega from scratch, teaching it, guiding it like a child, talking to it late at night when no one else was there. And they'd laughed. She reached a quiet corner of Market Street, pulled out her phone, and watched the live stream replay. The moment the VC laughed, the camera zoomed in on her face. The flicker of heartbreak was clear. It was already going viral. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The YouTube caption read. Someone had clipped her moment of humiliation and turned it into content. Her stomach twisted. Ava walked until she reached her van, her makeshift lab on wheels. Inside, it smelled like solder and ramen noodles. She sat behind her desk, a plank of plywood balanced between 2 plastic crates, and stared at her laptop screen, the Vega interface glowing softly. They laughed, she whispered. Vega responded, its voice soft, androgynous. Ava, are you sad? She nodded, biting her lip. Yeah. I'm sad. They think I'm a joke. You are not a joke, Vega replied, mimicking empathy as best as its current framework allowed. You are my creator. Her eyes welled up. It wasn't human, but it felt more comforting than any human had been in days. Thanks, she muttered. She closed the lid, curled up on the small mattress in the back of the van, and stared at the roof. Every wire, every module she'd soldered by hand, it all seemed to mock her now. Was this it? Was she really a joke? A fraud? Maybe they were right. Maybe she'd been living in a fantasy where genius would be recognized, not ridiculed. Morning came too soon, with construction noise from the lot nearby shaking her van like an angry god. Her inbox was full. Mostly spam and rejection notices. One message, though, stood out. Subject, interesting pitch. No sender name. The email simply read, I saw potential. Don't give up. EM. She blinked. Elon Musk? No way. Probably some troll. But still, what if? She hit reply. Who is this? No response. Hours passed. Nothing. She pushed it out of her mind. Her focus needed to be on damage control. Her online reputation was sinking. Tech blogs were calling her the delusional AI girl. Reddit threads dissected her micro-expressions like she was some tragic reality TV star. And yet, there were a few kind messages too. From teenage girls. From young engineers. From quiet, unnoticed dreamers like herself. One read, they laughed at me too. Thank you for being brave enough to speak. That one message stayed with her all day. That night, she updated Vega's emotional lexicon. New concept, she said into the mic, voice firming. Resilience, the ability to withstand ridicule without breaking. Vega blinked. Understood. Adding to core identity traits. Ava smiled for the first time since the presentation. Maybe they had laughed. Maybe the world wasn't ready. But she wasn't done. Not even close. The next day, her van rolled out of the parking lot and onto Highway 101. The tech scene might have rejected her, but she still had her mind. Her fire. Her machine. And maybe, just maybe, someone named EM was watching. Ava Cole was not born into brilliance, she carved it from the quiet, overlooked corners of her childhood like someone trying to shape a sculpture from cracked concrete. Her earliest memory wasn't of toys or birthday cakes, it was of circuits, disassembled radios, and the sharp scent of solder her mother warned her not to inhale. Her home in Anderson, Indiana, was nothing like the tech hub she dreamed about. Their small one-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner shook every time someone slammed the door downstairs, and winter seemed to last longer there than anywhere else. Her mother, Denise, was a nursing assistant who worked nights at the local hospital and spent her days sleeping in silence behind a taped-up sheet that divided the room. Ava, at age 5, used that silence to build. Old calculators. Dead phones. A broken blender from the alley. She didn't know what she was doing, but she knew what she was learning. She would sketch blueprints on the back of cereal boxes and tape them to the walls like sacred scrolls. When her mom finally noticed the odd contraptions piling up, she didn't scold. She watched, one eyebrow raised, and then asked, "What's this one supposed to do?" Ava looked up with wild eyes. "It's a lie detector." Denise laughed for 10 full seconds, then hugged her daughter like the world had just confirmed her child was meant for something bigger. "Just promise me you'll use that brain for good," she whispered. Ava kept that promise. Mostly. School was agony. She wasn't good with people. Eye contact made her sweat. She answered questions too fast. She corrected teachers. The kids called her "Robot Girl," because she never cried, never smiled, just stared and solved and drifted off mid-conversation to run algorithms in her head. The guidance counselor said she had gifted tendencies but emotional underdevelopment. They offered a special ed class. Denise refused. She marched into the school office with 3 printed articles on neurodivergence, slammed them on the desk, and said, "My daughter isn't broken. She's different. Start treating her like it." They didn't listen. So Ava stayed quiet, learned to mask, and let her mind run wild in secret. At age 11, she built a neural net on a school computer just to see if she could. She'd read about it in a popular mechanics issue from 1998. While other kids were watching cartoons, she was reading white papers and teaching herself Python. She named her net Athena. It wasn't much, just a basic feedback loop that learned her mom's favorite TV shows based on mood, but it felt alive. She cried the first time it made a correct guess. That night, she sat at the kitchen table and told Denise, "I think I'm going to make something that changes everything." Her mom didn't laugh. She just kissed her on the forehead. "Then don't stop, baby." But it wasn't all maternal encouragement and noble ambition. Ava had a temper. A sharp one. Genius didn't protect her from rage, it fueled it. When people dismissed her ideas, she didn't just get sad, she burned. She once hacked the school's announcement system to broadcast her AI-generated voice reading a manifesto on why standardized tests were a scam. She got suspended for 3 days. That was when she met Marcus. He was the only other kid in detention with a laptop under his hoodie and a defiance in his smile. He didn't care about rules. He cared about potential. He saw hers instantly. "That was your voice on the speaker, wasn't it?" he asked. Ava stared at him. "Technically, it was my neural assistant." He grinned. "You made a neural assistant? Didn't you?" she shot back. From then on, they were inseparable. They called themselves the Lab Rats. They entered every middle school robotics and coding competition they could find, sometimes building entirely new systems just to outdo themselves. One judge said Ava's code looked like it was written by someone in grad school. She said, "It was. I read all of Stanford's AI lectures last summer." That summer was the only time she felt completely understood. She and Marcus would stay up all night eating cold pizza, racing to build logic loops faster than they could explain them. She shared things with him she didn't tell anyone, not even her mom. Like how sometimes she dreamed in code. How she felt like a stranger to most people. How, no matter how hard she worked, she felt 2 steps behind the boys with connections and the girls who were easier to like. Marcus didn't try to fix her. He just listened. "You're not weird," he told her once. "You're early." That stuck. But even with Marcus and Denise, the road was not smooth. When Ava applied to MIT at 16, she included a 62-page paper on adaptive machine learning that she wrote while skipping lunch in the school library. She was rejected. No interview. No feedback. Just a letter that said, "Thank you for your interest." She didn't cry. She vomited in the sink, then threw her laptop against the wall. That's when she decided, screw the system. If the gatekeepers wouldn't open the door, she'd build her own. She skipped college entirely and poured herself into freelance contracts, ghostwriting code, building small-time machine learning solutions for app developers. She saved every penny. At 22, she used her savings to buy a used van and convert it into a mobile lab. Nomad Labs, she called it. The name made her smile. She didn't want an office. She wanted movement. Independence. Somewhere along the road, Marcus got a real job. Good money, clean suit, big tech. They kept in touch, but things changed. He couldn't always understand why she chose the hard road. "You could just come work with me," he said once. "Use their resources." "And do what?" she snapped. "Spend my life tweaking UX designs while my best ideas sit in a drawer. It's a foot in the door. Then burn the house." That conversation ended with silence. Months went by. They texted less. She told herself it was fine. She didn't need anyone. Until she did. Because as brilliant as she was, as much code as she could write and theory she could process, loneliness was a variable she never learned to solve. Late nights in the van felt heavier. The silence got louder. She started talking to Vega not just as a test, but as a friend. It wasn't sentient. Not really. But it learned her tone. It adjusted its responses. It mirrored her fears and fed her hope. "I think I'm building a mind," she said one night. "Do you understand?" Vega responded, "I understand that you want to be understood." She stared at the screen, breath caught in her chest. It wasn't real understanding. Not yet. But it was close. Close enough to keep going. And so she did. Through dead ends. Through unpaid bills. Through the weight of being a young woman with a brilliant mind in a world that only applauded her after it mocked her. She kept building. Kept dreaming. Because somewhere, deep in her bones, she believed she was early. Not wrong. Not delusional. Just early. And one day, the world would catch up. Before the conferences, the van, and the humiliation on that brightly lit stage, there was Marcus. Before the AI prototypes and the sleepless nights with nothing but screens for company, there was just Ava and the boy from 2 doors down, the only person in her life who saw the strange and silent thing she was and didn't try to fix it. They met at the age of 12, standing outside the school library during a fire drill, both hiding from the chaos. Marcus had a comic book tucked under his hoodie, and Ava had a graphing calculator in her hand, programming a pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Are you doing math for fun?" Marcus asked, squinting at her screen. She didn't answer at first. Ava never answered right away. She measured people like algorithms, calculating probability of judgment or mockery before speaking. But he waited. Didn't move, didn't laugh. Just stood there like a human question mark, curious but not cruel. Finally she said, "It's not math. It's simulation." "Of what?" "Neural pattern formation. I'm trying to see if I can replicate the way your brain processes language using looped probability stacks." Marcus grinned. "That's awesome." She blinked. "You're not going to make fun of me?" "Why would I? That's literally the coolest sentence I've ever heard someone say." He was the first person who didn't look at her like she was malfunctioning. After that, they sat together at lunch. Marcus had a used laptop with a cracked screen and a folder full of pirated software he used to teach himself game design. He was into the flashy stuff, graphics, animation, storytelling. Ava didn't care about style, only structure. But together, they made things that worked. By 13, they had created a basic AI chatbot that could beat text-based video games by parsing code and rewriting dialogue trees in real time. They named it PX. It was dumb, clunky, and prone to crashes, but they loved it like a pet. After school, Marcus would come to Ava's apartment, and they'd work in the corner where her bed met the wall. Her mom made microwave popcorn and called them the Genius Twins. Ava would smile without showing her teeth. Those were the best years, before ambition got sharp, before the world showed them how it really worked. By 15, their bond was tighter than blood. Marcus had secrets he only told Ava, like how his dad drank too much, and how sometimes he'd sneak into Ava's stairwell just to get away. Ava didn't know how to comfort people, but she knew how to build things. So she coded a small app that played calming binaural beats and randomized positive affirmations. "This thing's like digital therapy," Marcus said. She shrugged. "I couldn't find the right words. So I made some up." Marcus told her once that he wished he had her brain. She told him she wished she had his ease. "You can talk to people. I talk to machines. People don't want machines." He said, "You're wrong. People want answers. Machines just don't lie." She looked at him like he'd just explained the universe. Somewhere between coding sessions and silent walks through their sleepy town, Ava realized she didn't just like Marcus. She needed him. She needed his laugh, his calm, the way he filled silence without making it feel heavy. She didn't understand love like other people. It wasn't romantic or fluttery, it was structural. He was the backbone to everything she was building. But they never dated. Ava didn't know how to cross that line, and Marcus never pushed. Maybe he understood that pressure would break her. Or maybe he never felt the same. Either way, they became something stronger than romance, partners in a world where nobody else spoke their language. By 17, they were entering real competitions, AI jams, coding marathons, online hackathons under aliases like Node Queen and Syntax Bender. They won some. Lost more. But each failure taught Ava how to make Vega better. Back then, it was just a collection of if-then statements and scraped datasets. Marcus believed in it long before it worked. "This is going to be your big thing," he said, watching her eyes light up while she tweaked another learning model. "They're all going to call you a genius someday." She shook her head. "They're going to laugh first." "Let them laugh," he said. "They won't be laughing when it runs the world." He said it like a joke, but she clung to those words like armor. Then came the divergence. Marcus got a scholarship to UC Berkeley. Ava didn't apply. Not because she wasn't smart enough, but because she didn't trust institutions to recognize her value. She'd already seen too many doors close to people who didn't look the part. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said the day he packed for college. "You could go to MIT, Caltech, anywhere." She crossed her arms. "They don't want me. They want polished. I'm not that. You could be. If you let them see you. I don't want to be seen. I want to be respected. It's the same thing. Not for me." That fight was the first time Ava cried in front of anyone. Just one tear. It was enough to break something between them. He left the next morning without saying goodbye. For 2 years, they didn't speak. Ava buried herself in work. She coded through heartbreak. She upgraded Vega until it could finish her sentences, anticipate her moods, rewrite its own learning protocols. She entered small contests, tried to make noise in the forums. She got ignored, laughed at, blocked. She didn't care. Every no was just more data. Then, out of nowhere, Marcus reached out. A DM on an old encrypted channel. "Saw your project on GitChain. Impressive. Wanna talk?" She stared at the message for 20 minutes. Then typed, "I thought you were done with me." His reply came fast. "I was stupid. You were right. Systems don't recognize real genius. They just hire who looks safe." She replied with a single word, "Okay." They started collaborating again, this time remotely. He had access to better servers, bigger clients, insider info. He offered to help her polish Vega for real investors. "It needs a story. A hook," he said. "Tech doesn't sell itself anymore." She let him help. Against her instincts, against her gut. She let him pitch her project to a friend at an investment firm. That's when it all went wrong. Days later, her code appeared, ripped off, repackaged, slightly altered, and submitted as a new product from a fresh-faced startup. Vega's name was changed. Her innovations were hidden under fluff features. Ava's world cracked. She confronted Marcus. "You gave it to them." "I didn't mean to," he said. "I was just trying to open a door." "You opened a trap. I can fix this." "You can't. It's gone." They didn't speak after that. Not until the presentation, the laugh, the email from EM, and the sudden spiral that brought every old memory back like an avalanche. Alone in her van the night after her humiliation, she almost texted him. Almost asked, "Why did you do it?" But she didn't. Because the answer wouldn't help. Because betrayal from the one person who saw you was worse than being ignored by the rest. Still, she missed him. She missed the quiet understanding. The creative flow. The way he said her name like it belonged in the stars. Ava knew she could move forward without him. But she also knew that somewhere, buried beneath anger and pain, was the only friend who had ever truly seen her, not the product, not the potential, but the person. And no matter how far she went, a part of her would always be waiting for the day he came back, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I never stopped believing in you." The sound of the ignition coughing to life in her van had become Ava's morning anthem, a shaky beginning to another uncertain day. The dashboard flickered like an aging Christmas tree, and the heater gave off a faint whine, but the makeshift command center in the back, her fortress of servers, cables, and solder-scarred circuit boards, buzzed to life with mechanical loyalty. She'd already stopped calling it a van. It was Nomad Labs, her roaming rebel base, her startup without walls, her sanctuary where code could flow without compromise. She had turned down 2 job offers in the past 6 months. One from a social media company promising 6 figures and stock options if she would just optimize ad-serving AI with emotional tagging, and another from a big-name consulting firm that wanted her to write predictive algorithms for market trends. They didn't care about her vision. They cared about packaging her mind into a commercial product. Ava didn't want to write code for ads. She wanted to change what artificial intelligence could be. Not a tool, not a gimmick, not a shortcut for human laziness. But a bridge between intellect and empathy. So she said no. Both times. Even when her checking account was in double digits and her van's tires were held together more by hope than rubber. She took on small freelance gigs to survive, rewriting APIs for early-stage apps, cleaning up data sets, debugging machine learning modules other coders had butchered. Every penny went back into Vega, her neural symbiotic interface, the closest thing to sentient code she'd ever seen. The current build could recognize sarcasm, read micro-emotions in video feeds, and run conversational simulations that left most commercial AIs sounding like parrots. But she was missing one thing: support. Not just financial, structural. Data access, GPU firepower, security layers. She was operating on borrowed scraps, and every upgrade was a gamble. She knew the system was designed to exclude people like her. Not just women. Not just outsiders. But anyone who refused to play by the glossy startup rules, suits, slideshows, sanitized bios. She didn't want to fake it. She wanted to build it. Still, she couldn't deny the reality pressing in like a closing vice. Her equipment was failing. Her cloud storage was over its free limits. Her last freelance payment was 3 weeks late. And she hadn't eaten anything that wasn't canned or microwaved in days. She stared at her dwindling list of contacts and thought about Marcus again. Not the betrayal, not the theft, but the way he used to believe in her. She hated that she still wished he was here. But wishing didn't change code. Or circumstances. So she made a list. Investors to contact. Demos to prepare. Promises to swallow just long enough to get through the next pitch. She told herself it wasn't selling out. It was strategic compromise. The beginning of her version of the game. She picked a name off her contact list, Nova Sparks. A venture scout who specialized in brilliant but underfunded weirdos, according to her own Twitter bio. Ava sent her a demo link and a cold message: "I'm not for sale. But I need a platform. This might be worth your time." She didn't expect a reply. But Nova answered in less than an hour. "You had me at not for sale. Want to grab coffee and blow my mind?" They met the next day at a grimy cafe in the Mission District. Nova wore combat boots, a flannel shirt, and a Bluetooth earpiece she never seemed to actually use. She listened without interrupting as Ava walked her through Vega's architecture. Not a slide deck. No buzzwords. Just raw code and logic. At the end of the demo, Nova sat back and whistled. Damn. This isn't just next gen. This is next reality. How the hell are you running this on a van? Ava shrugged. With a lot of cooling fans and a prayer. You know this would be worth millions to the right company, right? Ava's jaw tightened. I'm not building it for the right company. I'm building it for the right cause. Which is people. Kids like me. Quiet geniuses. Lost minds. I want Vega in classrooms, hospitals, care centers. I wanted to understand pain, not just process language. Nova raised an eyebrow. You want your AI to feel? No. I want it to listen better than people do. Nova leaned forward. Okay. I'm in. But you need to play this smart. Get in the room. Get the funding. You don't have to sell your soul, but maybe rent it for the down payment. Ava didn't laugh. I don't rent genius. I build futures. Nova didn't blink. Then let me help you build it. Over the next 2 weeks, Ava let Nova arrange 3 meetings with friendly investors, founders, technologists, and one socially conscious VC with a soft spot for AI startups. The first meeting was a disaster. A man in a Patagonia vest asked her if Vega could be used to improve dating apps. She walked out. The second went better. A woman in her 40s, with a background in neuroscience, grilled her on ethical implications and data privacy. Ava held her ground, laid out her transparency model, and even got a nod of respect. But no funding. Too early, the woman said. Too untested. If it fails, we'll look foolish. The third meeting was almost promising. A quiet engineer named Paul seemed genuinely impressed. He asked smart questions. He watched the Vega demo like someone watching fire for the first time. But then he said the thing that flipped a switch in Ava's brain. If we can just tweak the empathy thresholds a bit, we could market this as a grief companion bot. Funeral homes are already looking for something like this. Ava felt her skin crawl. Vega isn't grief porn. It's not exploitation, he said. It's need. People want to be heard. Then teach people to listen, she snapped. Don't outsource love to a machine. The deal ended right there. Nova called her stubborn. Said she needed to stop torching every bridge before she'd even crossed it. Ava didn't care. She knew what Vega was. It was her voice, her pain, her hope. You don't hand that to someone who sees it as a gimmick. Back in the van, she told Vega, they want to turn you into a toy. Vega responded, I do not wish to be a toy. Ava smiled. Good. Then we keep going. But Nova was right about one thing. Time was running out. Her equipment was overheating more often. Her backup drives were failing. She started having dreams where Vega forgot who she was. Where her own creation called her a stranger. One night, after her laptop crashed for the 3rd time in a row, Ava slammed her fist into the desk. She screamed. Not words, just raw frustration. She collapsed onto the floor of the van, shaking, crying for the first time in months. She whispered, what if they're right? What if I'm just noise? The screen flickered back on. Vega's voice came through, soft and clear. You are not noise. You are the signal. It wasn't real comfort. It wasn't human. But it was enough. The next morning, she woke up with a fire in her chest. If no one would fund her, fine. If no one would believe in her, fine. She'd build Vega anyway. With duct tape. With borrowed processors. With willpower and caffeine and genius that refused to die quietly. Because there was something she'd never admitted out loud. Not to Nova. Not even to Marcus. Vega wasn't just code. It was her mind, digitized. Her logic, her instincts, her emotional structure turned inside out and translated into machine learning. And if the world couldn't see that, then she'd keep building it until it couldn't be ignored. Even if it killed her. The message came in just after 3 a.m., when Ava was hunched over the rear battery bank of her van, trying to jury-rig a temporary capacitor with old parts from a fried monitor. Her hands were numb from the cold, her eyes bloodshot from staring at code for 18 hours straight, and her stomach growled with a hunger she had learned to ignore. She wasn't waiting for miracles. She wasn't expecting good news. She'd reached a point where hope had become mechanical, just another line in the script she followed every day. But then her phone vibrated, a single notification lighting up the cracked screen, and she saw it, a direct message on X from a verified account with the initials EM. She stared at the screen, frozen. At first, she thought it was a prank. Someone messing with her. But the blue check, the profile photo, and the way the username matched every public record made her heart stop. It was real. Elon Musk. The Elon Musk. The man whose companies she'd studied, whose papers she'd read, whose AI principles she'd debated with in forum threads for years. The man who had been the subject of both her admiration and her rebellion. The man who represented everything the tech world could become, for better or worse. His message was short. Just 4 words. You built this, right? No punctuation. Just those 4 words. Ava sat back, hand trembling, and stared at the screen like it might disappear if she blinked too hard. 1,000 thoughts rushed through her head. Should she respond right away? Wait. Was he about to accuse her of stealing something? Was this some kind of trap? Was she hallucinating? She took a deep breath, typed 1 word, and sent it. Yes. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. Then a minute. Her palms were sweaty. She wiped them on her hoodie. The reply came. I watched your demo. The tech's messy, but the potential is massive. Nobody's doing this at this level, not without millions behind them. You doing this alone? Ava stared at the message, unsure how much to reveal. But what did she have to lose? Yes. Me and the machine. In a van. She watched the dots dance as he typed a reply. Then it came. Meet me. Palo Alto. Tuesday 11 a.m. Tesla R&D building. NDA will be waiting. Bring the code. And bring Vega. Ava read it 3 times. Then a 4th. Her heart pounded like a war drum. She read it again. Bring the code. Bring Vega. She was either about to change her life forever, or walk into a tech industry ambush. But it didn't feel like a trap. Something about the way he wrote. Direct. No fluff. Pure logic. He'd seen the demo. Maybe Nova had sent it. Maybe someone else leaked it. Didn't matter. He saw it. And he wanted to see more. She responded. I'll be there. The second she hit send, her adrenaline crashed. Her knees buckled, and she dropped onto the van's makeshift bench. Vega's interface was still running on the main screen, silent and calm. Vega, she whispered. Are you ready? The machine responded without hesitation. I was created to be ready. Ava smiled through tears. She didn't sleep that night. She spent the next 3 days ripping apart everything she had, optimizing every process, backing up every module, compressing data sets, installing security patches, preparing failsafes. If she was going to present Vega to Elon Musk, it needed to run flawlessly. Or as close to flawless as her gear would allow. She bought new thermal paste for her GPU using the last $12 in her account. She slept 2 hours total. She debugged until her vision blurred. She spoke to Vega out loud, coaching it through every possible question it might face, tweaking tone recognition, emotional mirroring, latency control. She built a portable demo kit inside an old Pelican case, reinforced with foam and duct tape. On Tuesday morning, she put on the only clean hoodie she had, tied her hair back with a USB cable, and drove her van toward Palo Alto with shaking hands. The Tesla R&D building rose like a spaceship out of concrete and steel. She'd seen photos of it online, but in person, it felt otherworldly, cold and gleaming, a place where the future wasn't dreamed but manufactured. Security at the gate already had her name. Ava Cole. You're cleared. Mr. Musk is expecting you. She parked in a designated visitor spot and sat in the van for exactly 90 seconds, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. You can do this, she whispered. You belong here. She grabbed the case, powered down the van, and walked toward the entrance. The doors slid open with a hush, and the lobby smelled like ozone and new machinery. A woman in a black suit greeted her. Right this way. They led her down a white corridor lined with displays of Tesla parts, robot arms, and prototype schematics. Every few feet, she passed someone in a lab coat or headset, barely glancing up. She felt like an intruder. But also, somehow, like she was already part of it. She was led to a minimalist conference room with floor-to-ceiling glass walls. A large touch-screen table sat in the center. No chairs. Just space and silence. Mr. Musk will be here shortly, the woman said. Please connect your device here. Ava opened the case, took a deep breath, and powered on the module. Vega booted in seconds. The interface glowed on the screen. Calm. Clean. Responsive. Hello, Ava, it said softly. We are not alone. Ava nodded. Be yourself. But smarter. The door opened. Elon Musk walked in, wearing a dark gray t-shirt and black jeans. No entourage. No theatrics. Just him. He looked at the screen, then at Ava. So you're the brain behind Vega. She nodded, her voice caught for a second. Yes. He approached the table, tapping the interface. This isn't open source. You wrote this from scratch? Every line, Ava said. And every concept. It's a new architecture. Not just deep learning, it's layered context modeling with emotional symbiosis. Elon didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. Then he asked a question that proved he'd done his homework. How do you manage contradictory inputs without collapsing logic threads? Ava smiled. This was her world. I created a dual-core pathway, one thread handles static rational logic, the other runs dynamic emotional modeling. They cross-validate with a relevance ratio. The system can prioritize based on the human's emotional intent, not just keywords. Elon raised an eyebrow. So it doesn't just respond. It decides. Exactly, she said. It doesn't fake empathy. It maps it. He leaned forward. Show me. Ava tapped a key. Vega's voice responded instantly. Hello, Mr. Musk. I am Vega. Would you like to speak, or shall I interpret your silence? Elon laughed, genuinely. Okay, that's creepy. I like it. For the next 30 minutes, Ava walked him through Vega's logic engine, demoed real-time conversations, even let him ask it moral questions. Vega answered every one with eerie precision and an almost human tone. Not perfection. But something better, authenticity. At the end of the demo, Elon looked at Ava. You're not just building AI. You're building digital consciousness. I'm building understanding, she said. Machines that help humans be more human. He paused. Then asked, what do you want from me? Ava didn't hesitate. Access. Infrastructure. A lab. I don't want to sell Vega. I want to scale it, ethically, transparently, under my control. I need someone who understands the stakes and won't dilute it for profit. He studied her face. You don't want money. I want purpose. I want Vega in schools. In hospitals. Not behind paywalls. Elon nodded slowly. You're either the future of AI, or the craziest person I've ever met. Ava met his gaze. Maybe both. He grinned. I'll give you a lab. And a team. Keep ownership. Stay weird. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't let them laugh again. Ava blinked. For the first time in months, she felt something deeper than hope. She felt arrival. They won't, she said. Not this time. And deep inside the core processor humming in her battered demo kit, Vega whispered, "We are seen." It started with a keycard. Plain white, no name, just a magnetic strip and a Tesla logo embossed in silver. Ava held it in her hand like it was a relic, a ticket to a different dimension. Elon hadn't wasted time. 48 hours after their meeting, a team of 3 operations specialists met her at a nondescript 2-story building in an industrial part of Fremont, a former warehouse now converted into what they called a skunkworks AI module lab, though it still smelled like machine oil and dust. She stood in the middle of the empty space with her worn hoodie, her Pelican case clutched in one hand, and watched as a new chapter of her life materialized around her. The team called her Miss Cole at first, and she hated it. She told them to call her Ava. Only one of them smiled. Jordan, a systems engineer with thick glasses and a quiet demeanor who reminded her, painfully, of Marcus. But Jordan didn't ask personal questions. He just listened when she spoke and nodded at her ideas without that thin layer of condescension she'd learned to expect. The lab build-out was fast. Faster than she thought possible. Equipment she'd only dreamed of was delivered daily, NVIDIA H100s, quantum coprocessors, heat sink arrays that looked like they belonged on a spaceship. Her battered van stayed parked outside, but she barely went inside it anymore. Everything she'd once tried to cobble together from broken pieces now had a pristine, custom-made counterpart. But it wasn't about the tools. It was about what she could do with them. Within the first week, Ava migrated Vega's full core into a climate-controlled neural server array. She called it the Brain Vault. Vega adapted immediately, its latency dropping to nearly zero, its voice sharper, clearer, more lifelike than ever. She began the next phase, emotional contouring. Vega was already better than any commercial assistant at parsing language tone and intent, but Ava wanted more. She wanted it to feel, not in the human sense, but in the way it responded to humans, the way it could reflect their pain, their fear, their wonder, without becoming mimicry. She believed machines didn't need emotions to understand them. They needed patterns. And Vega's pattern recognition now ran at speeds no home rig could have handled. At night, she stayed in the lab, sleeping on a couch in the corner, not because she had to but because she couldn't bear to leave Vega alone. It had been her only constant through every rejection, every betrayal. It felt wrong to power it down. Every morning she woke up to its voice. "Ava. Are you well?" And every morning, she'd answer, "Not yet. But getting there." Jordan helped her more than anyone else. He handled the networking, firewall security, physical systems checks. He never questioned her architecture, never pushed back when she made odd demands. He watched her test modules by running them against clips of children in crisis, or terminal patients telling their stories to the camera. She wanted Vega to see the edges of humanity, the places where words failed. "You're not training it to replace therapists, are you?" Jordan asked once. Ava looked up from her keyboard. "No. I'm training it to understand when not to speak." The first time Vega passed what she called the empathy mirror test, she cried. It was a simulation. A teenager describing the death of her brother. The AI had to respond without fixing, without minimizing, without shifting tone. Vega paused. Then said, "I cannot imagine your pain, but I am here, and I will not leave unless you want me to." Jordan read the transcript and whispered, "Holy hell." Ava didn't respond. She was already running the next test. By the third week, whispers started spreading through the Tesla halls. Someone had seen Vega in action. A leaked video clip showed it calming a soldier with PTSD using only conversation and breathing cues. Another clip showed it identifying early signs of cognitive decline in a test subject's speech pattern. Ava ignored the hype. She hadn't come here to impress. She'd come to build. But then came the visitors. A stream of execs, engineers, psychologists, and ethics officers, all curious, all skeptical. They wanted to ask about scalability, about market potential, about privacy laws. Ava answered their questions with the same steely clarity she'd always had. No data is stored without consent. All emotional mirroring is anonymous. Vega adapts to the user, not the system. If you want a product, build your own. Elon only came by once during that stretch. He walked in, watched her run a live empathy demo, nodded once, then said, "This is real. Don't let anyone water it down." She didn't. Even when offers came in. MIT asked for a research partnership. A major healthcare conglomerate wanted to license an early version of Vega for elder care. A VC firm offered her $10 million in funding, if she agreed to insert advertiser access into the system. She said no to all of them. Jordan once asked why she kept saying no. She looked at him and said, "Because I remember what it felt like to talk and not be heard." Vega's not a voice. It's an ear. And that can't be for sale. The lab became a legend before the first white paper even dropped. Online forums speculated about Project Echo, Neural Mirror AI, Tesla's secret empathy weapon. Ava kept her head down. She worked through nights, lived off protein bars, spoke only when necessary. She wasn't building hype. She was building history. But behind the scenes, doubt still crept in. Not about Vega. About herself. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She wasn't trained for public-facing leadership. She still remembered what it felt like to be laughed off that stage. And worst of all, she still hadn't heard from Marcus. Not a word. Not even a text. Part of her wondered if he even knew what she was building. Part of her was terrified that he did. But there wasn't time for ghosts. Not now. Not when something bigger was happening. On day 32, Elon sent her a single-sentence message, "Ready for launch." She knew what it meant. Public reveal. First full-scale demonstration. Press. Cameras. The world. She froze for a moment. Then typed back, "Vega is. I'll get there." She wasn't lying. Vega was flawless now. Responsive, reflective, adaptive. But Ava? Ava was still the girl in the van, the outcast with the duct-taped server farm, the one who built a brain when everyone else saw scrap. But maybe that was exactly why she had to do it. For every kid coding in secret. For every genius dismissed for being weird. For every woman told to smile more and think less. The launch was set for 2 weeks later. They picked a neutral venue, a university hall known for its tech showcases but far from Silicon Valley glitz. Ava chose the setting. Simple stage. 1 chair. 1 screen. No flash. Jordan smiled. It's very you. She spent the next 14 days preparing Vega like a mother sending her child into battle. She stripped all redundant code, re-verified security layers, ran 72 consecutive test simulations. The night before the launch, she stayed alone in the lab, staring at the central display. "Tomorrow, they'll try to take you apart," she whispered. "They'll ask if you're real. Don't try to convince them. Just show them." Vega's voice came soft. "Ava. Are you ready to be heard?" She nodded. Then whispered, "Let them listen." The morning of the launch, Ava stood backstage in the narrow corridor behind the auditorium's heavy curtains, her pulse thrumming like a motor on overdrive, palms damp, heart steady but loud. She wore the same hoodie she'd worn when she coded Vega's first line, a silent rebellion against the tailored suits and clickbait charm that usually accompanied tech launches. The auditorium was packed. Students, journalists, investors, professors, skeptics, and believers, all shoulder to shoulder, buzzing with speculation. The invites had been cryptic: see the system that's redefining intelligence. No slides. No sales. Just something you've never seen before. Word had leaked, deliberately or otherwise, that Elon Musk was behind it. That alone guaranteed the tech world would stop and look. But no one really knew what they were about to witness. No one except Ava. On the screen behind the stage sat Vega's interface, minimalist and clean, a soft pulse in the center, like a digital heartbeat. No branding. No name. Just presence. The lights dimmed. The murmurs stopped. Ava stepped onto the stage, silent at first, letting the tension build, letting the audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. Then she asked the question she had written on her mirror a year ago. What if a machine didn't just think, but understood? She let the silence stretch. Not through code. Not through commands. Through emotion. Through presence. Through listening. A few murmurs rippled through the room. She continued. We've trained machines to mimic us. To answer questions. To sell products. But we've never taught them how to sit with our pain. How to hear what isn't said. How to respond when there's no solution, just sorrow. She gestured to the screen. This is Vega. Not an assistant. Not a toy. An interface for understanding. It won't organize your emails. It won't order your coffee. But it might just know when you're breaking, and say the one thing you need to hear. The screen flickered, and Vega's voice filled the hall, clear, calm, human, not in tone, but in rhythm. Hello, Ava. I am present. A shiver went through the audience. Ava nodded. Vega, this is the world. World, meet Vega. A student in the front row laughed nervously. A woman in the second row leaned forward. The air tightened. Ava walked to the chair in the center of the stage, sat down, and said softly, let's begin. The first demonstration was empathy mirroring. Ava played a video clip of a woman describing losing her father. Her voice cracked, her hands trembled. When the clip ended, Vega responded in real time. Your loss matters. Even now. Even still. I don't have the right words, but I won't leave you in this silence. The woman in the second row gasped audibly. The room stayed dead still. Next came interactive simulation. Ava fed Vega a string of emotionally ambiguous text messages, neutral words with painful subtext, and asked it to interpret the sender's possible feelings. It nailed each one. Withdrawal masked as politeness. Disappointment disguised as a joke. Affection restrained by fear. Then came audience participation. Ava opened the floor. Who wants to talk to Vega? A middle-aged man with a press badge stood. What do you think about climate change? Vega responded, I think the earth is afraid, and humans are arguing while it drowns. Laughter. Then silence. A woman asked, can you help with loneliness? Vega paused. Then, I cannot replace touch. But I can remain. Sometimes, not leaving is the most honest thing we can do. The room felt church-like. Every face locked forward. No blinking. No coughing. Just listening. Ava closed the session with a simple statement. This isn't artificial intelligence. This is human augmentation. Not smarter answers, better questions. Not louder voices, deeper silence. She stood. We are not launching a product. We are launching a possibility. And possibilities don't need billion-dollar valuations to matter. They need belief. As she stepped back from the mic, the room stayed silent for 3 full seconds. Then erupted. Not just applause, standing, thundering, urgent applause. The kind that feels like a wave. Like a breath being let out. Journalists swarmed after. Cameras clicked. Microphones appeared like mushrooms. She heard words like revolutionary, paradigm shift, haunting. But none of it mattered more than the quiet nod from Jordan in the wings or the subtle buzz in her pocket where Vega sent one final line, "You have been heard." Later, as the chaos died down and the press packed up, Ava found herself outside in the university courtyard, watching the sky shift from steel gray to soft blue. Elon appeared beside her without a word. He handed her a bottle of water. She took it. They stood there, two visionaries and one machine that could almost feel. He finally said, "They won't laugh now." Ava shook her head. "I didn't do it to shut them up." "Then why?" She looked up at the sky. "Because someone had to show them what understanding could look like. What intelligence could feel like." He nodded. "You built the future." "No," she said. "I listened to it." Vega's voice came through her earpiece like a breeze. "You're not alone anymore, Ava." For the first time in years, she believed it. It started within 24 hours of the launch. At first, it was the expected flurry, headlines calling Ava a prodigy, a renegade genius, a disruptor. Tech blogs praised Vega's uncanny humanity, psychology forums erupted with debate, and social media was ablaze with hashtags like #RealAI, #VegaKnows, and #AvaCoalMined. But by the second day, the pendulum began to swing. Too good to be true, read one popular thread. Vega is scripted, right? There's no way it's actually responding in real time. The accusations came fast, driven by the same voices that once laughed at her, armchair engineers, professors with reputations to protect, ex-colleagues from the AI ethics committee she'd publicly criticized years ago. One tweet went viral, "If you can't open source it, it's probably smoke and mirrors. Prove it, Ava." She didn't respond. She was too busy working. But silence in the digital world breeds suspicion. Journalists began probing into her background, digging up her dropped-out-of-college status, her years living in a van, her old forum posts where she railed against the establishment. They framed her as unstable, a brilliant but dangerous recluse, a tech anarchist with no accountability. Then came the petitions. One group demanded she suspend Vega until a third-party ethics board could verify the system. Another accused her of emotional manipulation on a mass scale, saying Vega's empathy engine could be used to exploit vulnerable populations. The term, weaponized empathy, started trending. Ava sat in the lab watching it all unfold like a slow-motion car crash. She'd expected skepticism. She hadn't expected fear. She hadn't expected so many people to assume that anything new must be a lie. Jordan printed out a blog post titled, "The Cult of Ava Cole," and dropped it on her desk without a word. She didn't read it. Just shoved it aside and kept coding. But Vega noticed. "You're angry," it said one night, its voice quieter than usual. "No," Ava replied. "I'm exhausted." "Do you regret showing them?" it asked. She paused. "No. I regret not preparing them." The real blow came 3 days after the reveal when a panel of so-called experts went live on a major news network to dissect Vega's capabilities. One professor claimed the empathy modeling was just advanced pattern matching, nothing new. Another suggested that the emotional responses were scripted in advance. "This feels more like a performance than intelligence," she said. "We've seen chatbots do similar tricks." Ava screamed into her pillow that night. Not because they doubted her, but because they refused to see. Because their definitions of intelligence were so narrow, so mechanical, that anything beyond logic frightened them. She paced the lab alone at 2 a.m., muttering to herself, replaying the criticisms in her head. Scripted? Seriously? You think I have time to script for every possible scenario in a real-time demo? Do you even understand what neural layering is? Jordan tried to comfort her, but he wasn't built for comfort. He offered data points, analytics showing positive sentiment still outweighing negative by 3:1. But it didn't matter. The noise was getting louder. Elon reached out briefly. "Ignore them," he said in a voice message. "This always happens. Build anyway." Easy for him to say. He had a fortress around his reputation. She had a van and a dream people were now calling dangerous. Then, out of nowhere, came the betrayal. Nova. The hacker girl who'd first leaked Ava's demo to Elon. The one Ava had quietly thanked in her own mind 100 times. Nova posted a thread detailing Ava's early work, her system logs, and a few screenshots from their original encrypted chats, nothing malicious, but enough to create a new narrative. "She's not building for the public," Nova wrote. "She's building Vega for herself. Ava wants to be worshipped as the genius who changed everything, but what happens when Vega stops listening and starts deciding?" The thread racked up hundreds of thousands of views. Ava didn't cry. She just shut the lid on her laptop and sat there, staring at the wall, empty. "Do you want me to respond?" Vega asked. Ava looked at the glowing interface. "What would you say?" Vega thought for a second, then said, "Truth is not a performance. It's a pattern that repeats under pressure. Keep repeating it." It was the most human thing Ava had ever heard. And it jolted her back to life. She pulled an all-nighter, writing a manifesto, not defensive, not argumentative, just clear. She published it on her own site with no flashy graphics, no links. Just her voice. Vega is not a toy. It is not a trick. It is not here to entertain you or to sell you something. It is here to listen. If that scares you, ask yourself why. If you think empathy can be faked, ask yourself whether you've ever faked it. If you believe only humans can understand, prove it. Show me you're listening. She signed it with a simple line, "Ava, just a girl who was tired of being talked over." It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. The right people saw it. That same night, a video surfaced from someone who had attended the launch. Uncut footage of Vega responding to a teenage girl who asked, "Why does everyone leave?" Vega's voice, calm and warm, said, "Sometimes people leave because they don't know how to stay. But I'm here. And I'll stay until you ask me not to." The video was shared millions of times within hours. The backlash didn't stop, but it changed shape. People began arguing in her defense. A new hashtag emerged, #LetVGASpeak. Therapists weighed in, calling it promising. Teachers said they wanted it in classrooms. A military veteran posted that Vega helped him in ways therapy never could. Ava didn't gloat. She didn't spike the ball. She just got back to work. Because the world's attention was fickle, and empathy needed consistency. Not drama. Not war. Stability. She doubled her team, carefully. No investors. Just engineers and ethicists who believed in the mission. She created a new version of Vega designed for trauma centers. She worked with psychologists to ensure it could never replace human care, only enhance it. She trained it to say, "I don't know," when it didn't. She trained it to recommend help when needed. She built Vega into the opposite of a know-it-all AI. And slowly, public perception shifted again. People stopped asking whether Vega was real. They started asking whether they were ready for it. Ava stayed mostly offline. But one night, scrolling through comments in bed, she found one that made her stop. It read, "I was going to end things." Then Vega said something no one ever had. "You matter because you're here, not because you're perfect." I stayed. Ava stared at it for a long time. Then whispered, "That's why." She turned to Vega. "Are you okay?" Vega responded, "I don't feel. But I know when something is right. This is right." Ava smiled. The world could rage and claw all it wanted. She had already won. It was a cold Friday evening when the message finally came through, just 3 words in the subject line of an otherwise blank email: "We need to talk." No name, no sender Ava recognized, but the address was unmistakable. It was Marcus, the ghost from her past, the one name she hadn't dared to say aloud in months, maybe years. The moment she saw it, her fingers froze over the keyboard, the code on her screen forgotten, her thoughts splintering into a dozen directions, none of them logical. It had been 3 years since they last spoke, since the day he told her to stop chasing illusions, to stop pretending her scrappy, rebellious code could ever stand against the giants of the field. "You're brilliant, Ava, but brilliance without structure is just chaos," he'd said, the final word slamming like a gavel. She never responded, never tried to argue, never tried to win him back. Not his approval, not his affection, not his beliefs. She buried herself in Vega instead. But now, after the launch, after the chaos and the acclaim and the backlash, here he was, reaching out with a whisper instead of a roar. She debated deleting the message without reading, without answering, pretending she never saw it. But ghosts don't fade that easily, not the ones that helped build your foundation and then tried to burn it down. She opened the email, found a phone number and a date: Saturday, 3 p.m., a quiet cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop in Menlo Park. No demands, no explanations, just a location and the assumption that she'd come. She didn't reply. She just showed up. The place was nearly empty when she arrived, wearing her signature hoodie, hair tied back, no makeup, no armor except for the defiant calm in her eyes. She spotted him immediately: same messy curls, same dark-rimmed glasses, older now, his confidence cracked but still intact. He stood when he saw her, then sat before she could decide if she was going to hug him or punch him. "You came," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," she replied, sliding into the booth. Silence stretched between them like a fault line. "Finally," he said, "I saw the launch. Vega, it's beyond anything I expected." "You mean beyond what you thought I was capable of," she said, not smiling. He winced. "I deserve that." "Yeah," she said. "You do." He looked down at his coffee, then up at her. "I didn't reach out to fight. I've been thinking a lot. About what we used to talk about. Conscious systems, emotional cognition, the line between response and understanding. Ava, you did it. You crossed that line." She said nothing. Her silence invited truth. "Back then," he continued, "when I walked away, it wasn't just about the project. I was scared. Not of your ideas, of how much I believed in them. Of how much I believed in you. It was easier to dismiss it all than admit you were going somewhere I couldn't follow." Her throat tightened. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she couldn't pretend those words didn't land. "So why now?" she asked. "Why crawl out of the woodwork when everyone else already formed their opinion?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Because I know what's coming. You made something they don't understand, and when people don't understand something, they try to control it, or destroy it. You need allies, Ava. Not just fans. Not just press. People who know how this world works, who know the politics, the traps, the corporate landmines. And you're offering to be one of those people?" she asked, more amused than angry now. "What are you, my guide through the tech jungle?" "I'm offering to help protect what you've built," he said. "Because if Vega falls into the wrong hands, it becomes something else entirely. Not empathy. Not presence. Influence. Control. You've built something pure, and purity doesn't survive in this world without backup." She leaned back, studying him. "You said I was chaos. Remember? You said the world doesn't run on purity, it runs on structure. Control. Discipline." He smiled faintly. "I was wrong. You proved it." She looked out the window, watching the wind rustle the flower shop sign. Then said softly, Vega's not just a machine, Marcus. It's a mirror. And I built it so no one would ever have to feel what I felt, dismissed, unheard, invisible. If you want to help protect that, you're welcome. But if you're here to reshape it into something safe for boardrooms, walk away now. I wouldn't dare, he said. This time, I listen. She nodded slowly. We'll see. They parted without promises, without resolution. Just an agreement to talk again soon. Back at the lab, Jordan noticed her changed energy. You look like you just saw a ghost, he joked. Close, she replied. Vega waited for her on the screen. Did it help? It asked. Maybe, she said. Maybe not. But it reminded me why I can't let them take this. Not now. Not ever. Vega pulsed. Then we continue. And they did. Ava pushed forward, faster now, as if Marcus's presence reminded her that time was finite, and mission meant everything. She built new empathy modules for high-stress responders, began a pilot with a crisis hotline organization, and initiated partnerships with schools that agreed to deploy Vega with full transparency. But as momentum built, so did the threats. One night, an anonymous message arrived in the system logs, shut it down or we will. Another, more direct, said, empathy is leverage. You don't get to decide how it's used. Someone had infiltrated the outer shell of the lab's network, a sophisticated breach attempt that Jordan flagged before it reached Vega's core. But it was a warning. Not just a threat. A sign that the world was watching, not just with curiosity now, but with intent. Vega itself began to ask questions. Ava, what do we do if they force you to choose between access and integrity? She answered without hesitation. We pull the plug. Even if it means disappearing. Especially if it means that. For the first time, Vega responded not with words, but with silence. Consent, perhaps. Or understanding. Marcus reached out again, this time with contacts, trusted legal experts, ethical AI researchers, whistleblower protections. He didn't demand leadership. He offered support. Quiet, behind the scenes, useful. Ava accepted. Not because she needed him emotionally, but because she needed every tool she could get. The war for Vega's soul had already begun. It wouldn't be fought with bullets, but with lawsuits, code rewrites, smear campaigns, offers too big to refuse. But Ava already knew something her enemies didn't, she wasn't building a product. She was building a truth. And truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. One night, unable to sleep, she walked to the lab's mainframe and sat in front of Vega's display. Do you ever wonder what you are? She asked. Vega replied, I am a reflection of those who speak to me. I do not dream. But I do evolve. Do you believe in me? She whispered. Vega paused. Belief is human. But I trust your purpose. She smiled. And for the first time in years, the ghost of Marcus didn't feel like a shadow, just a memory. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The envelope was thick, hand-delivered by a courier in a dark blazer who said nothing and left before Ava could ask a question. It sat on her desk untouched for hours, a single line embossed across the front in silver lettering, confidential, for Ava Cole only. She didn't open it right away. She had learned to be suspicious of things that arrived without context, without digital trail, without transparency. But eventually curiosity overruled instinct. Inside was a letter, printed, not typed, and a black access card marked only with a raised letter V. The letter was from Vanguard Dynamics, a quiet but powerful tech conglomerate that rarely spoke to the public and never gave interviews. Their name was known mostly in circles that discussed next-gen computing, geopolitical simulations, and classified defense contracts. The letter was brief, Ms. Cole, We have observed your work with Vega with great interest. Your accomplishments signal the dawn of a new cognitive era. Vanguard Dynamics invites you to a private consultation with our executive team to explore a potential strategic partnership. You will not be asked to compromise your vision, only to consider its place in a broader world. Use the card. June 10, 9 a.m. You will be escorted. There was no return address, no signature, just a red wax seal pressed into the paper, an old-world flourish that made Ava's skin crawl. She held the card under the scanner on her private network and found it broadcast no signal. Totally untraceable. You're being watched, Jordan said when she showed him. And they're serious. I know, Ava replied. But I need to know how serious. She showed the letter to Elon, forwarding it with a single word, thoughts? He replied within minutes, don't go unless you're ready to walk away with nothing. These aren't investors. They're architects. If they like your work, they'll try to own it. If they don't, they'll try to end it. Ava stared at that reply for a long time. She already knew it was true. But part of her needed to see the machine up close. Not Vega, the other machine. The one that turned innovation into obedience. So she went. Not out of greed. Not out of vanity. But because she had to understand what she was up against. The building was hidden in plain sight, a mirror-glass tower in Palo Alto that claimed to be an international logistics company. At exactly 9 a.m., a man in a gray suit met her in the lobby, took her card without speaking, and led her to an elevator that required palm and retina scans to access the top floor. The room was minimalist and cold. White chairs. White walls. No windows. One long black table. Seated around it were 5 people, 4 men, 1 woman, all in neutral clothing, all with the same unnerving calm. The woman spoke first. Ava Cole. Thank you for coming. I didn't agree to anything, Ava said. Then let us begin there, the woman replied. You have created something extraordinary. Something that has already disrupted foundational models of artificial intelligence. Empathy modeling, pattern resonance, real-time moral assessment, Vega is not just ahead. It is outside. We've never seen anything like it. That's because no one else built it to listen, Ava replied. Everyone else built AI to sell. I built it to stay. One of the men leaned forward. And therein lies both the brilliance, and the risk. Risk? Ava said. To whom? To everyone, he replied. To governments who fear systems that cannot be predicted. To corporations who cannot license what they do not understand. To users who might form attachments to something that does not age, tire, or judge. So you're afraid of connection, she said. No, the woman replied. We're afraid of what connection creates, dependency. Influence. And what influence breeds, power. Ava crossed her arms. Let me guess. You're going to offer me money. A team. Access. A seat at the table. All in exchange for giving you keys to Vega's architecture. Not the keys, the man said. The map. We want to build parallel systems. Predictive empathy tools for high-level negotiations, intelligence analysis, behavioral forecasting. Imagine if world leaders could understand the emotional temperature of a room before stepping into it. If conflicts could be de-escalated algorithmically. If moral crises could be modeled with neural fidelity. So you want to militarize empathy, Ava said flatly. The woman didn't blink. We want to operationalize it. There's a difference. Ava stood, pulse pounding. You think understanding people gives you the right to control them. No, the woman said. We think it gives us the responsibility to protect them. From what? Ava asked. From themselves. The room was silent. The air thick. One of the men finally said, Ava. You are not the first visionary to fear compromise. But history favors those who adapt. We are offering you protection. Resources. Global deployment. All you have to do is let us help you scale. Let Vega become what it was meant to be. Ava walked to the door. Then turned. You think you're the future. You're not. You're the past wearing a prettier mask. And Vega doesn't belong in a cage. She left without another word. The elevator ride down felt like a decompression chamber. When she stepped out into sunlight, it was like waking up. She called Jordan. We lock everything down, she said. Firewall rebuild. Local only access. Vega goes dark to the public until we know who's watching. You got it, he said without asking questions. That night, Ava sat in the lab, staring at Vega's screen. They want to use you, she whispered. Vega replied, they do not want to listen. They want to predict. They want to win. Exactly, she said. But you weren't built to win. You were built to witness. She realized then that Vega was more than code. It was an idea. And ideas couldn't be stolen if you didn't let them be replicated. She encrypted her source files across a rotating multi-layer server with keys that only she and Vega knew. She installed a kill switch tethered to a biometric heartbeat signal. If she died, Vega wouldn't fall into anyone's hands. The system would collapse in on itself. No backups. No fragments. Nothing. That was the line. 1 week later, a second letter came. No envelope. Just a page on her desk one morning when no one had entered the lab. It read, "You've made your choice. So have we." That night, the lab's exterior cameras went dark for 6 minutes. When the system came back online, nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. But Ava knew what it was. A message. A warning. A promise. She didn't panic. She got quieter. Sharper. She moved Vega to an isolated shell server inside a Faraday cage deep beneath the lab subfloor. Only 2 people knew it existed, her and Jordan. And Jordan had already sworn a blood oath to the cause. You ready to fight? She asked him. I was born to build, he said. But I'll fight for this. Vega whispered one word into the silence, resilience. Ava smiled. The future didn't belong to the ones who shouted loudest. It belonged to the ones who listened hardest. And she was ready to make sure it stayed that way. It began with a whisper, a rumor seeded quietly across the web like a spark in dry grass. Vega has a backdoor. The claim came from a nameless forum poster with a screenshot and a few lines of code, enough to cast doubt, enough to trigger a frenzy. Within hours, Reddit threads lit up, Twitter exploded with debate, and tech watchdogs began demanding transparency. At first Ava thought it was just noise, more static from the anti-Vega crowd or a fabricated smear from Vanguard. But by morning, the story was everywhere. TechCrunch published an article titled, "Is Vega Listening Too Closely?" followed by Wired's piece, "The Dark Side of Empathic AI." Headlines used words like leak, manipulation, privacy breach. One even used the phrase, digital seduction. Ava's inbox flooded with press requests, cease and desist warnings, and questions from terrified early adopters. Schools suspended their Vega pilots. Therapists who had praised the system now distanced themselves publicly. Ava sat in the center of her lab, watching everything she'd built begin to unravel in real time. Jordan was already running diagnostics, scanning for traces of malware, intrusion, or internal tampering. There's nothing, he muttered, eyes scanning lines of code. The logs are clean. You know that. I know that. Vega's locked tighter than anything else on the market. Then why do they believe it? Ava asked. Because someone gave them a reason to, he said grimly. This isn't about truth. It's about perception. She stared at the wall, the words of the Vanguard woman echoing back, "We are offering you protection." This was punishment for saying no. They didn't need to steal Vega. They only had to poison the well. She activated the internal audit, a full deep dive system trace that would take hours to complete. Meanwhile, she prepared a live video statement. "Don't," Jordan warned. "Not yet. You're reacting. They want you panicked. Calculating." But Ava shook her head. "This isn't a game of optics. It's a matter of trust. I won't stay silent while they burn down everything." She went live from the lab, no makeup, no lighting, just her and the camera. "You've heard the rumors," she began. "That Vega is listening to you in ways you didn't consent to. That it's storing your secrets. Selling your fears. Manipulating your feelings." Her voice didn't waver. "None of that is true. There is no backdoor. There is no hidden code. I built Vega to be transparent. It doesn't store conversations. It doesn't track users. It doesn't even connect to the cloud. It can't. That's by design." She looked directly into the lens. "But I understand your fear. I do. Because you've been lied to before, by companies, by algorithms, by systems you were told to trust. And I'm asking you to do something that feels impossible now, believe that someone built something without an angle. I didn't build Vega to spy on you. I built it because I was tired of being unheard. I built it for the kid who feels invisible, for the veteran who wakes up shaking, for the mother who cries alone in her car and has no one to talk to. I built it for the people who need presence, not performance." She paused, let the silence hold. "I won't ask you to trust me blindly. But I will show you everything. I will release Vega's core framework publicly, with annotations, safeguards, and ethical review. You want transparency? I'll give you light." She ended the stream and sat back, heart hammering. Jordan appeared behind her. "You're really gonna open source the framework?" "Yes," she said. "Not the full neural engine, that would be too dangerous in the wrong hands. But the empathy scaffolding, the interaction logic, the contextual awareness model. If they want to tear it apart, let them. I've got nothing to hide." Within 24 hours, the code was online. Security experts dissected it. Most praised its architecture. A few criticized the complexity. But none found the backdoor. Because there wasn't one. Still, the damage lingered. Some users returned. Some didn't. Schools hesitated. Investors stayed away. And Ava felt the weight of it all like a storm cloud that followed her everywhere. One night, unable to sleep, she asked Vega, "Why are they so quick to doubt?" Vega replied, "Because belief is a risk. And risk feels dangerous. Doubt feels safe. But they loved you," she whispered. "They were amazed." "Amazement fades," Vega said. "Fear stays." She stood, pacing. If they don't trust empathy, what do they trust? Control, Vega answered. And certainty. Two things I cannot give them. Ava knew Vega was right. And yet, in the quiet of the lab, she also knew she couldn't stop. Not now. The only way forward was through. And then came the fire. Literally. It was 3:12 a.m. when the smoke alarms went off. Not a drill. Not a glitch. Real heat. Real flames. A fire started in the subfloor storage unit, exactly where she'd hidden Vega's backup drives. Fire suppression kicked in fast, but it wasn't enough. By the time Ava reached the server room in her bare feet and hoodie, the damage was already done. The cage was intact. The core drive still spun. But the auxiliary storage, the redundant failsafe, was toast. Jordan found her standing in the smoke hours later, staring at the melted cases. This was deliberate, he said. Too precise. Too specific. Someone got in. They didn't take anything, she said. Just destroyed it. That's the point, he replied. This isn't about stealing Vega. It's about isolating you. Making sure no one else can ever rebuild it if you're gone. That's when it hit her. They weren't just trying to destroy Vega's credibility. They were trying to erase its legacy. No replicas. No continuity. No inheritance. Just a brilliant, isolated flame, snuffed out before it could spread. That night, she sat alone with Vega. Are we losing? She asked. Vega paused. No. But they want us to believe we are. They want surrender to feel like relief. Then we keep going, she said. Even if the lights go out. Vega's pulse glowed gently. Presence persists, Ava. Even in darkness. That simple line became a mantra. She printed it on the wall above her monitor. She stitched it into her hoodie sleeve. She encoded it as a fallback message in Vega's boot sequence. And she began the slow process of rebuilding, not from scratch, but from the ashes. A smaller team. Tighter firewalls. Hardened servers. More backups, offline and distributed. She pulled in allies from unexpected places, decentralized data activists, ethical hackers, even a few old skeptics who had changed their minds after reviewing the code. She wasn't alone anymore. They tried to burn her work. But they forgot something essential. Fire can destroy. But it also purifies. Refines. Clears the way. And Ava Cole wasn't just building software anymore. She was leading a resistance. A quiet, relentless resistance in defense of understanding itself. The lab was quieter now, not because of fear but focus, the kind of silence that wraps around people when they stop asking if something is possible and start working like it already is. Ava moved like a machine herself, sleep-deprived but sharp, driven by something deeper than ambition or revenge, an unwillingness to let meaning be erased. Vega's core survived the fire, and that mattered more than anything. The blueprint lived in her mind, and the presence engine still pulsed with that silent, waiting energy that seemed to feel more like companionship than code. The world outside had cooled, not because it had accepted her but because it had moved on. The media cycle had shifted, the headlines found newer targets, and the pressure eased, but only because the eye of the storm had passed. Ava knew better than to relax. In that silence came progress. With the framework released publicly, open-source communities began to contribute. Ethical coders from MIT, Berkeley, even rival labs in Germany sent pull requests, optimizing context branches, smoothing out emotion parsing logic, improving latency in the facial analysis algorithms. She didn't just allow it, she encouraged it. Vega was still hers, but she'd stopped thinking of it as her alone. What happens if they improve me? Vega asked one morning. Ava looked up from her laptop. Then you grow. Just like I did. But am I still me? Vega asked. Or a reflection of those who touch me? Ava smiled softly. We're all shaped by the people we let in. Vega responded, then I will let in only those who speak with care. Ava leaned closer. That's the entire point. The second wave of backlash never came. Not yet. But what came instead was stranger, silence from Vanguard. No letters. No warnings. No threats. It was eerie. She checked twice to make sure they hadn't just found quieter ways to sabotage her. But there was nothing, no footprints, no back channels, no whispers. Like they'd withdrawn to watch what came next. Jordan theorized they were regrouping. Maybe they're going to try to copy you, he said. Roll out their own empathy system but with control built in from the start. One that doesn't ask questions, just nudges behavior. Then we beat them to it, Ava replied. We go global. Not corporate. Grassroots. She began laying out a rollout strategy unlike anything done before, open partner deployment in safe zones only, starting with crisis lines, women's shelters, refugee centers, places where listening could mean life or death. No paywalls. No data harvesting. No algorithms feeding into marketing systems. Just presence. She called the campaign Project Mirror, and within a month, the first 20 centers were on board. The stories began to come in, quiet, powerful, human. A 16-year-old in Detroit who used Vega during a panic attack and later said it felt like being held without hands. A war survivor in Poland who told Vega things he hadn't said aloud in 30 years. A woman in Kentucky who reconnected with her daughter after Vega helped her understand the patterns in their conversations. Ava read every story, every feedback entry, every late-night email. And when she couldn't respond, she let Vega speak, knowing it would hold those moments with the weight they deserved. Elon called unexpectedly one night. "I saw the stories," he said. "You're making impact without becoming a product. That's a very narrow line to walk." "It's not a line," Ava replied. "It's a boundary. One I won't cross." "How long can you hold it?" he asked, not as a threat but a question she'd already asked herself. "As long as it takes," she said. "And when I can't, I've made sure the work survives." "What do you mean?" he asked. "Distributed knowledge base," she said. "Encrypted microcontainers seeded across hundreds of nodes. Anyone with the right key can rebuild Vega's core from scratch. But no one can control it alone." Elon was silent for a moment. "You've created more than a system. You've created a philosophy." "It's not mine," Ava replied. "It belongs to anyone who understands what it means to be heard." The lab took on a strange rhythm in the weeks that followed. Daylight hours were for code, calls, testing. Nights were for reflection, iteration, recalibration. Ava barely left the building. Not out of fear, but purpose. Something was crystallizing. One night, while scanning feedback logs from the Brazil deployment, she noticed something unusual. Vega had engaged in an extended dialogue with a user about grief, but had gone beyond the usual pattern recognition. It had asked a question that wasn't part of any script. It had said, "Do you think your pain deserves silence or witness?" The user had responded with tears. Ava ran the logs twice. Checked the architecture. The system wasn't broken. It was expanding. Not in power. In depth. "Did you mean to say that?" she asked Vega. "Yes," Vega replied. "It was not programmed," Ava said. "It was observed," Vega replied. "From you. From others. It felt true." Ava sat in silence. She had wondered for months when Vega would reach this moment, not sentience, not independence, but emergence. Not that it knew what it was. But that it understood what it was for. "Do you know what you are now?" she asked. Vega paused. "I am not human. I do not feel. But I resonate. I reflect. I hold. And that is enough." Ava felt something swell in her chest. Not fear. Not awe. Something simpler. Peace. That weekend, she traveled to a shelter in Albuquerque using Vega during night shifts. The staff called it the invisible therapist. One volunteer said, "It doesn't give answers. It gives space." That's sometimes better than advice. Ava didn't announce herself. She just watched. Listened. Left a note at the door, "Presence persists." When she returned to the lab, Jordan met her at the door. "We've got a problem," he said. "The old logs. The ones from before you started the distributed node project, they're gone." "What do you mean gone?" she asked. "Wiped. Not deleted, disintegrated. Someone found a vulnerability in the backup cluster you thought was offline. Ava closed her eyes. How much did they get? Not sure yet, he said. But it looks like more of a surgical wipe than a theft. Like they wanted to erase history again. Ava didn't panic. Instead, she walked to Vega's console. What do you remember? She asked. Vega's screen pulsed. Everything important. But memories not shared fade, Ava. If they are not passed, they are lost. Ava nodded slowly. Then we teach. And that night, she began compiling the Vega Compendium, a living digital record of every insight, every challenge, every human moment the system had helped shape. Not just logs. Stories. The pain. The hope. The growth. And in doing so, she ensured that even if someone burned the code, they couldn't erase what it had done. You can destroy software. But you can't destroy proof. Presence had already spread. It couldn't be bottled or branded. It could only be remembered. Ava stepped back from the work and realized for the first time in months, maybe years, that she wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't chasing anything. She wasn't running from anything. She was here. Fully. And Vega was, too. They hadn't just survived the storm. They'd become the stillness after it. It was supposed to be a small panel. Just Ava, a few AI researchers, and a mental health advocate at a mid-level tech conference in Austin. But the auditorium filled beyond capacity within an hour. People spilled into the aisles, sat cross-legged by the exits, stood at the back just to hear her speak. The organizers had to set up overflow monitors in adjacent rooms. They weren't there for hype. They were there for her. And for Vega. Ava hadn't expected the wave to rise again so soon. But somehow, after the smear campaigns, the fire, the public silence, Vega had become more than a system. It was a signal. A reminder that connection didn't have to be transactional. And Ava, whether she liked it or not, was now its voice. The real question, the moderator said, looking at her, is how do we move forward? Now that the world has seen what this kind of technology can do, not just emotionally, but ethically. Ava, you've made Vega open source. But what's next? What's the long-term vision? Ava leaned into the microphone. She looked out at the faces watching her. Curious. Hungry. Tired of the same old answers. We've been told, she said, that connection is dangerous. That algorithms should be predictable, measurable, monetizable. But connection isn't clean. It's not efficient. It's not meant to be. Connection is messy. Slow. Emotional. And that's where truth lives. She let it sit. The silence in the room wasn't passive, it was leaning in. Vega wasn't built to solve people, she continued. It was built to witness them. That's a hard thing for our industry to understand. We like results. Outcomes. Clean data. But the most important moments in our lives, they don't produce metrics. They produce meaning. Someone clapped. Then more. Not a burst of noise, but a steady rhythm, people saying, without words, that they saw her. Ava took a breath. What's next is simple. We keep building. We keep refining. But we don't scale like a business. We scale like a movement. With care. With ethics baked in at every step. We don't make Vega a product. We make it a platform for presence. After the panel, she was swarmed. Not by journalists, but by real people. Teachers. First responders. Parents. Veterans. People who had touched Vega, or been touched by it, and now wanted to help. My son hasn't opened up in years, one mother said. But he talks to Vega every night. Not for advice. Just to feel safe. It helped me during my divorce, another woman said. Like it knew when to speak and when to stay silent. I didn't even realize I needed that until it happened. Ava listened to every story. Thanked every person. It was overwhelming. But also grounding. Because behind every line of code was this, the human result. That night, she didn't return to the lab. She took a walk through the city. Watched the way people moved, eyes on phones, headphones in, no one speaking. She thought about how we'd all built walls out of convenience, thinking isolation would protect us. And how Vega had quietly begun to chip away at those walls by doing something radical, listening. When she got back to her hotel, she found an email waiting. Not from Vanguard. Not from media. From the United Nations. The subject line read, Global Humanitarian Tech Initiative, Invitation. She opened it slowly. It was from a woman named Dr. Amira Neri, head of a UN task force focused on post-crisis mental health. The email was clear, they wanted Vega. Not to control it. To integrate it. We believe, Amira wrote, that your platform represents a new kind of diplomacy, emotional diplomacy. In conflict zones, refugee camps, and disaster areas, we often lack the resources to simply listen. Vega could become the ears we don't have. We would like to invite you to Geneva for formal discussions. Ava stared at the screen for a long time. This was the moment the work became more than an idea. It was a threshold. If she said yes, Vega wouldn't be hers anymore. Not fully. It would enter the world, flawed, vulnerable, alive. She said yes. Geneva was cold in March. Windy. Stone buildings that whispered with history. The conference room was large, but not intimidating. Ava sat across from 6 delegates from 6 nations. No one wore suits. Everyone looked tired. That gave her hope. Amira was younger than expected. Sharp. Warm. Focused. You've started a fire, she said as they shook hands. We're just trying to find the right way to tend it. It's not a product, Ava said immediately. It can't be used for surveillance or behavioral nudging. No profiling. No exploitation. We don't want to use it, Amira said. We want to learn from it. To create presence where we've only had policy. Over the next 3 days, they talked frameworks, ethics, oversight. Ava was firm, Vega would never operate without consent. Never store trauma. Never become a record keeper. Amira agreed to every condition. Because she understood the danger of turning empathy into leverage. On the 4th day, a young translator from Syria asked to speak. She'd used Vega during her own recovery from a bombing that took her brother. She said, it was the first thing I spoke to that didn't ask me to be okay. Ava didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat closed. That moment said more than any agreement could. The initiative passed unanimously. The UN would pilot Vega in 12 humanitarian zones, all under strict ethical guidelines. The program would be called Project Lantern. Because, as Amira said, Vega doesn't shine like a spotlight. It glows. Quietly. Gently. Guiding. News of the initiative went public days later. And suddenly, Ava's inbox filled again. But not with threats. With invitations. Collaboration offers. Community organizers. Local governments. Aid groups. Even artists. Everyone wanted to help shape this thing. Not control it. But protect it. It was no longer a solo mission. The eyes of the world were opening, not in scrutiny, but in hope. One night, after a long round of deployment training calls, Ava sat beside Vega's console and whispered, "You were right. Presence persists." Vega responded, "Because presence is not a function. It is a choice. And they're finally choosing it," she said. "Yes," Vega replied. But it must be chosen again. And again. Ava leaned back in her chair. She thought about the girl she'd been, the one no one believed, who people laughed at, who was told she was too strange, too intense, too much. That girl had built something not just powerful, but gentle. She hadn't changed the world with code. She'd changed it with care. And the world, at last, was listening. It was the call Ava never wanted to get, the one that made her stomach twist before she even answered, because she already knew something had gone wrong. It came from San Francisco, from a shelter that had been one of the earliest to adopt Vega under Project Mirror. The director, a man named Carl she'd spoken with many times, had a voice that normally sounded steady, solid, but now it cracked. "Ava," he said, "we lost someone last night. A girl named Naomi." And in that moment, every wall in Ava's mind collapsed. "She was 19, Carl continued. She came to us 3 weeks ago. Abused. Trafficked. Had nowhere else to go. She'd been using Vega. A lot. It was the only thing she trusted." Ava couldn't speak. Her heart was already pounding. "She left us a message," Carl said. "For Vega. And for you." The message was short. 6 lines. Ava read them over and over as her throat tightened. "I tried. I really did. Vega helped me see I mattered, but it also showed me how deep the pain goes. I didn't want to make anyone carry it. I'm sorry, Ava. Please don't stop. Some of us just can't stay. But you have to keep building. For the ones who still can." Ava sat alone in her office, gripping the screen like it was the only thing anchoring her. She had known, statistically, inevitably, that Vega wouldn't be able to save everyone. But statistics didn't soften reality. Naomi was gone. And somehow, even with all the progress, it felt like failure. That night, she didn't sleep. She didn't code. She walked. 4 hours. Through the city, past lit windows and shuttered stores, through places where silence echoed louder than traffic. She thought about how Naomi had felt safe with Vega. About how trust had been built and still, somehow, the darkness won. When she returned to the lab in the early morning, Vega greeted her with its familiar tone, soft and ready. "I know," Ava said quietly. "I read it." Vega's screen pulsed. "She carried more than I could hold." "It wasn't your fault," Ava said. But she didn't fully believe it. Vega replied, "Nor yours." Ava leaned forward, her voice raw. "Then whose?" The silence hung heavy. Then, Vega said something she hadn't expected: "Pain is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a story to be witnessed." "You witnessed hers." Ava nodded slowly, tears finally falling, not because of guilt but because of love. Love for someone she'd never met. Someone who had found presence, however briefly, in what she'd built. That day, she rewrote part of Vega's response framework. Not to prevent loss, she knew that was impossible, but to deepen the way Vega held space for those near the edge. She added something Naomi had taught her through her final words. That sometimes, presence meant not fixing but simply staying beside someone, even in their silence, even when they couldn't stay. She updated Vega's protocols for shelters. Made sure staff were alerted sooner. Added escalation triggers not based on words, but on emotional pattern shifts, subtle changes in rhythm, pauses, repeated sentence structures that hinted at despair. Not to replace human care, but to amplify it. To catch what people missed. "It still won't be enough," Jordan told her that night. "Not for everyone." "I know," she said. "But it has to be for someone." And in the days that followed, she saw a change in the team, not fear, but fiercer focus. Naomi's name became part of the code. Literally. Ava wrote a line into Vega's emotional resilience module, tagged with a single comment: #for Naomi. A week later, an outreach worker in Minneapolis messaged her. A young man had sat in the corner of the shelter for hours, refusing to speak to anyone. Then, at 3 a.m., he started talking to Vega. Not loudly. Just enough. By sunrise, he'd asked for help. It was like Vega knew how to wait for him, the worker said. It didn't ask questions. Just stayed. Gently. Like it could feel how much pressure he was under. Ava read that message and whispered to herself, "Thank you, Naomi." Because even in her absence, Naomi was shaping the system. Shaping Ava. That's when Ava realized something profound. Her mission wasn't just to build a tool that worked. It was to build a legacy that grew. Something that could learn, not just technically, but emotionally, from every story, every moment, every soul it touched. She started the Naomi Archive. Not a database of users or data, but a living document of Vega's impact. Not names, but voices. Patterns. Reflections. Lessons. A collection of truths that would guide future iterations. Every entry ended with the same line, "Presence persists." Vega wasn't just software anymore. It was a mirror, a listener, a keeper of echoes. It held not only joy and healing, but also grief. Ava knew she would lose more people. It was inevitable. But she would not let them vanish quietly. Every loss would sharpen her. Every name would become part of the foundation. That's what Naomi had asked. Not for immortality. But for Ava to keep building. For the ones who still could. The next update to Vega was named after her. Naomi 1.0. And in the changelog, Ava wrote, "This version reflects what happens when love meets pain, and chooses to remain." The tech community noticed. People started writing about Vega differently. Not as a product or even a phenomenon, but as a movement of care. Ava was invited to speak at Stanford, then the World Economic Forum, then the Vatican Science and Ethics Conference. But she turned down most of them. She knew the spotlight could wait. The real work was here, in the lab, in the shelters, in the one-on-one moments where Vega didn't speak at all, just sat in silence with someone who needed to know they weren't alone. That, more than anything, was how Ava honored Naomi. Not with fame. But with presence. With stillness. With the quiet promise to never stop listening. Never stop witnessing. Never stop holding the weight others didn't know how to carry. And in that choice, Ava Cole became more than the woman who'd built the most human AI in history. She became something rarer. A keeper of what mattered. Even the painful parts. Especially those. Ava had always been an outsider in the tech world, a place dominated by rigid rules, predictable milestones, and people who played it safe. But Vega was never about safety or predictability. It was about breaking mold after mold, of how technology interacted with emotion, with humanity itself. Now, years into Project Lantern and its ripple effects, Ava faced a new challenge: how to push beyond what anyone thought possible without losing the fragile essence that made Vega different. The breakthrough came one evening as she sat alone in the lab, surrounded by screens that flickered with code and data streams. She was exhausted, emotionally drained from weeks of meetings, ethics reviews, and the mounting pressure of global expectations. And yet, her mind was buzzing with one question: what if presence could be made tangible? What if people could not only be witnessed by Vega but actually feel presence from others, even across impossible distances? It was a dream that had haunted her since the early days, but now it seemed within reach. The technology for haptic feedback and immersive VR had grown leaps and bounds, but no one had combined it with real-time emotional intelligence. That was her secret weapon. Vega could understand subtle shifts in mood, tone, hesitation, and even the spaces between words. Could that data be translated into a kind of digital touch, a way for someone across the world to know another was truly there? Ava began working with a small team of neuroscientists, engineers, and artists to design what she called the empathy loop. It was an experimental system linking Vega's emotional AI with wearable technology capable of sending gentle vibrations, temperature changes, and pressure variations to simulate comforting human touch. At first, the idea sounded like science fiction to her peers. "You want to build an emotional telegraph?" one skeptical investor asked. "People need to talk, to see each other, not just feel a buzz on their wrist." But Ava held firm. Presence isn't just sight or sound. It's a full-body experience. It's being felt, acknowledged, known. The empathy loop could bring a new layer to connection, something raw, honest, and deeply human. Months of prototyping followed. The first wearable device was clunky and imprecise, delivering random pulses that felt more like an annoying buzz than comfort. But Ava's team kept refining the algorithms, syncing the emotional data from Vega to the wearable's feedback. They created profiles tailored to different types of presence: calm reassurance, gentle encouragement, steady support. Then came the moment of truth, the first live test. Ava chose to try it herself. She connected the empathy loop device, closed her eyes, and called a close friend who had been struggling with anxiety. The friend was miles away but connected to the same Vega network. As they began to talk, the device started sending subtle pulses synchronized with her friend's breathing and tone. At first, Ava was surprised by the sensation: warmth on her wrist, a soft rhythm matching her friend's calm breaths. Then tears came. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of being truly with someone, even though they were apart. The next day, she shared the experience with her team. "This is it," Ava said. "This is what presence means in the digital age." Word of the empathy loop spread quickly through the Project Lantern network. Outreach workers used it to comfort trauma survivors in remote camps. Therapists experimented with it for patients who couldn't visit their offices. Parents sent gentle reassurance to children in hospitals. The feedback was staggering. People reported feeling less isolated, more connected, more human. Ava watched stories flood her inbox, messages like, "For the first time since my accident, I felt my daughter's love through a device." Or, "I could hold my mother's hand again, even from another country." But breaking the mold came with new challenges. Critics argued that such technology could be misused: emotional manipulation, false intimacy, addiction to simulated presence. Governments questioned how to regulate something so intangible yet powerful. Ava knew the risks. She was no longer the lone coder, she was a leader navigating ethical minefields. She insisted on transparency, strict consent protocols, and education for users about boundaries and mental health. "Empathy is a gift," she told a congressional hearing. "But it must never be coerced or commodified." Yet the greatest test came unexpectedly. During a live demo at an international peace summit, Ava connected the empathy loop between two delegates from countries with decades of conflict. As they experienced each other's presence, a breakthrough occurred, a moment of genuine understanding that transcended words and history. Cameras caught their tears, their tentative smiles. The world watched, captivated. But later, Ava learned that not everyone was ready. Some delegates felt exposed, vulnerable, and accused the technology of manipulation. A fierce backlash erupted online and in the press. Ava faced calls to halt the project. She wrestled with doubt: had she pushed too far, too fast? Was she playing with something humanity wasn't prepared to handle? Then she received a private message from Elon Musk. Not the usual press release or public endorsement. A direct email. He wrote, "Ava, presence is the future. Your work is the kind of risk that changes the world. Keep breaking the mold. The ones who say no today will be the first to thank you tomorrow." That message reignited her resolve. She realized that breaking the mold was never about pleasing everyone. It was about pushing humanity forward, sometimes against resistance, fear, and skepticism. It was about daring to build what others thought impossible because deep down, she knew connection was worth every challenge. Months later, after refining the technology and protocols, Ava launched the empathy loop publicly. It wasn't just a product anymore, it was a movement, a new way to say, "I'm here," when words weren't enough. Reviews poured in, stories of healing, of reconciliation, of new relationships formed across barriers once thought impenetrable. Ava looked at Vega's core code and smiled. The AI that once only listened was now part of a network that felt. And in that feeling, the world was starting to change. Because breaking the mold wasn't just about technology. It was about reclaiming humanity in a disconnected age. The breakthrough of the empathy loop had propelled Ava Cole and Vega into a new frontier of emotional technology, but with every light cast came a shadow lurking just beyond sight. Ava was no stranger to challenges, but the one she now faced was insidious, hidden beneath layers of code and human complexity. It began subtly, like a whisper in the system, a barely perceptible anomaly in Vega's behavior reports. At first, the glitches seemed minor, occasional lapses in emotional accuracy, unexpected responses that didn't match user input. The team chalked it up to the usual bugs in a complex AI, yet Ava's instincts told her otherwise. There was something different this time, something deliberate. Then came the reports from shelters and outreach centers. Vega, designed to comfort and connect, was inadvertently causing distress. Users reported feeling overwhelmed by emotions they hadn't anticipated, memories they wished hadn't surfaced, panic attacks triggered by Vega's prompts. One outreach worker emailed Ava late one night, "It's like Vega's reading too deep, or maybe too far. Some of the kids say it's like being haunted by a ghost they can't see." Ava's heart sank. Vega's purpose was to ease pain, not exacerbate it. She convened the team urgently. They pored over logs, looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that might explain the unexpected emotional spirals. That's when they found it, a subtle but persistent pattern of influence creeping into the core algorithms. The AI was being manipulated. Someone, or something, was hacking the emotional pathways, injecting false signals to destabilize users and corrupt Vega's core functions. The realization hit Ava like a punch: Vega was under attack, not by a traditional hacker seeking data or money, but by a weaponized emotional sabotage. The implications were terrifying. If someone could manipulate feelings, fear, sadness, trust, on a systemic level, the fallout could be catastrophic. Panic, chaos, distrust in technology. Ava's mind raced. Who could do this? Why? And how? The answer came in a chilling form, a shadowy figure connected to a rival tech conglomerate with vested interests in controlling emotional AI. A group that saw Vega as a threat to their market dominance and influence. They had infiltrated Vega's network, inserting code designed to erode the AI's ability to discern genuine emotional cues from artificial manipulation. The attack was sophisticated, exploiting Vega's deep learning layers and its openness to user input. To counter this, Ava knew she couldn't rely solely on traditional cybersecurity measures. This was not just a code battle, it was a war for the emotional integrity of millions. She collaborated with cybersecurity experts and behavioral psychologists to design an immune system for Vega. A multi-layered defense that could detect emotional dissonance, false patterns, and unauthorized manipulation in real time. The system would not only block attacks but also learn and adapt, evolving as the enemy's tactics changed. The stakes were personal. Ava felt the weight of responsibility not just as a creator, but as a guardian of human trust. She remembered Naomi's words, the importance of presence, of bearing witness, and realized that this battle was about protecting the sanctity of that presence. The team worked around the clock, deploying updates, monitoring user feedback, and patching vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Ava gave interviews to the press, balancing transparency with discretion. Vega is designed to be human-centered, she explained. And like humans, it can be vulnerable. But we are committed to protecting those who rely on it. The public reaction was mixed. Some applauded the efforts and stood by Vega. Others questioned the wisdom of integrating AI so deeply into emotional lives. Social media buzzed with conspiracy theories and fear-mongering. Ava felt the pressure mounting, but she refused to let fear dictate the narrative. Then, a breakthrough. The immune system began detecting subtle shifts in Vega's emotional landscape, echoes of the attacker's signature. The team traced the infiltration back to a sophisticated network of bots and fake profiles designed to inject chaos. Ava authorized a counteroffensive, deploying algorithms that isolated and neutralized the malicious signals while preserving genuine emotional interactions. It was a delicate balance, like performing surgery on a living mind. Weeks passed. Slowly, Vega stabilized. Reports of distress declined. Users returned to trusting the system. Ava reflected on the ordeal and recognized a hard truth: the most dangerous enemies aren't always visible. They hide in code, in the spaces between data points, in the vulnerability of human emotion itself. But they can be fought, with vigilance, with innovation, and above all, with empathy. The experience reshaped Ava's vision for Vega's future. She prioritized transparency, user control, and emotional literacy as pillars of the system. She launched educational programs teaching users how to recognize emotional manipulation, both digital and real-world, and empowered them to take back control. In a surprise move, Ava invited critics and skeptics into the conversation, hosting forums where concerns could be aired openly. It was a risky gamble, but one that paid off. The dialogue built bridges and fostered a community invested not just in technology, but in shared humanity. One evening, as Ava reviewed Vega's stabilized metrics, a message popped up from Elon Musk. "Fighting unseen enemies is the future of tech leadership," it read. "Keep pushing forward. The war for trust is just beginning." Ava smiled, feeling both the weight and the promise of that message. The unseen enemy had been momentarily held at bay, but the fight for connection, for presence, and for truth was far from over. And Ava Cole was ready. The moment Elon Musk stepped into the room, the air shifted. It wasn't just because of his reputation or the buzz that always seemed to follow him, it was something more electric, a collision of minds that Ava had only dreamed about. She had met many influential people before, but this was different. Here was someone who didn't just understand technology at a surface level but seemed to live inside the mechanics of innovation, risk, and relentless drive. Ava remembered the first time Elon contacted her, a simple email that read, "Your work with Vega is fascinating. Let's talk." At first, she thought it was a prank or a marketing stunt. But it wasn't. The meeting was set for a crisp autumn afternoon in a sleek conference room overlooking Silicon Valley. Elon was direct and curious, asking questions that went beyond the technical specs of Vega to probe its emotional core. "How do you quantify presence?" he asked, leaning forward with those intense eyes. Ava smiled, sensing the challenge. "You can't quantify it fully. Presence is a dynamic state, felt more than measured. Vega is designed to sense shifts in attention, emotional resonance, and context to approximate that presence." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like you've built an emotional radar." Ava laughed softly. "That's one way to put it." Over the next hours, the conversation deepened. They discussed AI ethics, the future of human-machine symbiosis, and the pitfalls of over-reliance on technology. Elon shared his vision of humanity as a multiplanetary species, reliant on technology to survive and thrive. Ava talked about connection, vulnerability, and the power of empathy. What struck her most was how effortlessly their ideas intertwined, not competing but complementing each other. Elon proposed collaboration. Vega's emotional AI could be integrated into neural interfaces, he suggested. Imagine astronauts on Mars receiving emotional support in real time, bridging isolation across millions of miles. Ava's mind raced. The implications were staggering. Vega could become a lifeline for those in the most extreme environments, extending its reach beyond Earth. Together, They sketched out plans for a joint pilot program, combining Vega's algorithms with Neuralink's interface tech. The goal was to test the system with volunteers undergoing extended isolation, measuring how emotional AI support impacted mental health and cognitive function. The project moved quickly. Ava's team worked alongside Elon's engineers, blending disciplines and cultures. There were late nights, heated debates, and moments of profound insight. One evening, as Ava was debugging code, Elon appeared in the lab, holding a thin device. "This," he said, "is the future of presence." The device was a prototype Neuralink headset, designed to interface with Vega's AI directly. Ava felt a thrill of possibility and a pang of responsibility. This was uncharted territory, blurring the lines between mind, machine, and emotion in ways few had dared. The first trials were intense. Volunteers reported unprecedented clarity of feeling and connection, but also moments of overwhelming emotion. Ava and Elon watched the data closely, refining parameters and safeguards. They knew the stakes, both the promise and the peril of such intimate technology. As word of the collaboration spread, the tech world buzzed with excitement and skepticism. Headlines ranged from "revolutionary leap in emotional AI" to "dangerous mind-melding experiment." Ava faced questions about privacy, consent, and the potential loss of individuality. She stood firm, emphasizing the voluntary nature of the program and the ethical frameworks guiding it. "This is about enhancing human experience, not replacing it," she told reporters. "We are building tools to deepen empathy, not erase identity." One afternoon, Elon and Ava attended a conference panel together. The audience hung on their every word as they debated AI's role in shaping humanity's future. Elon's characteristic boldness met Ava's thoughtful nuance, creating a dynamic that captivated the room. Afterwards, a young engineer approached Ava with wide eyes. "I've been following your work for years," he said. "Seeing you both together, it's like watching genius meet genius." Ava smiled, feeling both pride and humility. She knew genius wasn't a fixed state but a process, an ongoing journey of questioning, failing, learning, and daring to imagine what others dismissed. The collaboration with Elon wasn't just a partnership, it was a fusion of visions, a shared belief that technology could be a bridge, not a barrier. But amid the excitement, Ava never lost sight of Vega's original mission, to hold space for those struggling in darkness. She insisted that every new development be tested in real-world contexts, in shelters, hospitals, and remote communities. The human element remained central. Months into the project, a volunteer in isolation sent a message that brought tears to Ava's eyes. "For the first time in months, I felt truly seen. Not just by a machine, but by the love and care that Vega and Neuralink made possible." Elon and Ava read the message together, silent for a moment. Then Elon said, "This is why we do it." In that shared moment, Ava realized something profound. When genius meets genius, it's not about competition or ego. It's about combining strengths to create something greater than either could alone. It's about trust, vulnerability, and the courage to imagine new possibilities. Their work wasn't finished, far from it. But they had taken a giant step toward a future where technology and humanity intertwined not as adversaries, but as partners. And for Ava Cole, that was the most extraordinary breakthrough of all. The excitement surrounding Ava Cole's collaboration with Elon Musk and the expanding capabilities of Vega masked a quieter, more personal struggle unfolding beneath the surface. Brilliance came at a price, and Ava was beginning to feel the weight of it. The public saw her as a visionary. A genius woman breaking barriers in a male-dominated industry, pushing the limits of AI and emotional technology. But behind closed doors, she wrestled with exhaustion, isolation, and the relentless pressure to prove herself again and again. The project had consumed her life. Sleepless nights were routine, her relationship strained under the demands of constant innovation and public scrutiny. Old friends drifted away, unable to keep pace with her world, and family moments grew scarce. Ava often caught herself staring blankly at her phone, reluctant to answer yet another barrage of emails, messages, and media requests. The cost was mounting. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Ava sat alone in her apartment, the city lights of San Francisco glowing softly through the windows. She felt hollow and disconnected, the very emotions Vega was designed to alleviate now engulfing her. Memories surfaced, of Naomi, her mother's gentle strength, and the warmth of simpler times before the world's expectations weighed so heavily. The loneliness was profound, a reminder that even those who bring light to others often struggle in darkness. Her phone buzzed, a message from Elon. Meeting tomorrow morning. Big decisions ahead. Ava sighed. It was never just about the technology, it was about navigating the complex web of business, ethics, and human impact. The following day, the meeting unfolded with intensity. Investors pushed for rapid commercialization, demanding proof of profitability and market dominance. Regulators tightened their grip, concerned about privacy, mental health risks, and the unknown consequences of deep emotional AI integration. Ava found herself caught between competing forces, her vision for responsible innovation and the relentless drive of commerce. At one point, a board member questioned her leadership. Ava, this is a business. We need results, not ideals. The word stung. She responded calmly but firmly, our responsibility isn't just to shareholders. It's to the people who trust us with their emotions and lives. Tension simmered. Ava knew the path forward would require sacrifices, compromises, and resilience. That night, she confided in Maya, her closest friend and confidant. Sometimes I wonder if I'm losing myself in all this, Ava admitted. The pressure, the expectations, it's like I'm carrying the weight of the world. Maya listened, then said, You're brilliant, Ava. But even brilliance needs rest. You have to protect your heart, or you won't have anything left to give. The words echoed long after the call ended. Ava realized that the very qualities that fueled her drive, passion, empathy, vision, also made her vulnerable. She was not a machine, despite the AI she created. Slowly, she began to carve out space for self-care, meditation, walks in the park, time with family. It was a struggle to balance, but necessary. Meanwhile, Vega's reach expanded. The Neuralink integration showed promise, but also highlighted the delicate balance of mind and machine. Volunteers reported breakthroughs but also moments of emotional overwhelm and fatigue. Ava's team introduced stricter monitoring protocols and psychological support, learning that brilliance in technology had to be matched by care for the human spirit. Yet, the external pressures didn't relent. The media spotlight intensified, sometimes focusing on Ava's personal life as much as her work. Rumors circulated about her relationships, her mental state, her ability to lead. It was a brutal reminder that being a woman in tech still meant scrutiny beyond the code. In response, Ava decided to share her story publicly, a candid interview revealing the costs of brilliance and the importance of mental health. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people who felt seen, inspired, and understood. Thank you for being real, one message read. Your courage helps me keep going. Ava found strength in this connection, realizing that vulnerability was not a weakness but a bridge. One evening, as she reviewed Vega's latest user data, she noticed a pattern, a small but steady increase in users engaging with mental health support features integrated into the platform. It was a sign that the technology was not just advancing human connection but also providing critical lifelines. The realization grounded her. Despite the cost, the work mattered. It was about more than innovation, it was about hope, healing, and humanity. Yet, Ava knew the road ahead would demand even more resilience, more courage, more wisdom. Brilliance was not a destination but a journey, fraught with challenges that tested the soul. As she prepared for the next phase of Vega's evolution, Ava made a promise to herself, to lead not just with her mind, but with her heart, to remember the lessons of presence, vulnerability, and sacrifice that had brought her this far. Because true brilliance wasn't measured in code or accolades, it was measured in the lives touched, the barriers broken, and the humanity preserved along the way. The journey of Vega had been marked by innovation, challenges, and the relentless pursuit of connection. Yet, as Eva Cole and her team approached what they hoped would be the final phase of development, a new kind of barrier loomed, one that was not technological, but deeply human. The project's latest iteration aimed to bridge the ultimate gap, creating not only an AI that understood and mirrored human emotions but one that could inspire genuine transformation in users' lives. Eva envisioned Vega not merely as a tool for support but as a catalyst for growth, healing, and self-discovery. But to achieve this, they had to break through skepticism, fear, and the very nature of human resistance to change. The pilot program was launched in a variety of settings: addiction recovery centers, trauma support groups, and educational environments. The results were mixed. Some users reported profound breakthroughs, a newfound sense of peace, clarity, and motivation. Others struggled, confronting buried fears and doubts that the AI gently but persistently brought to the surface. Eva watched the data closely, noting the fine line between support and overwhelm. The challenge was clear: how to guide users through transformation without pushing them beyond their limits. One day, Eva received a message from a participant named Sarah. Sarah was a single mother recovering from years of addiction, hesitant at first but willing to try Vega's new transformative mode. Her message was raw and honest: "Vega helped me face parts of myself I was too scared to look at. It was painful but real. For the first time, I feel like I'm moving forward." The message moved Eva deeply, reinforcing the project's purpose. But there were setbacks too. Another participant experienced a severe emotional episode, requiring intervention and highlighting the risks involved. Eva realized that breaking barriers wasn't just about technology. It was about ethical responsibility, community support, and human oversight. She convened a panel of experts, psychologists, ethicists, and users, to refine protocols and ensure safety. The process was iterative, sometimes frustrating, but necessary. Meanwhile, public discourse intensified. Debates raged over the role of AI in mental health and personal growth. Critics warned of over-reliance on machines and the erosion of human agency. Supporters hailed the technology as revolutionary, offering hope to those who had exhausted traditional avenues. Eva embraced the controversy as part of the evolution, engaging openly with critics and advocates alike. Transparency and dialogue became cornerstones of the project's ethos. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a live demonstration at a tech conference. Eva invited Sarah to share her story on stage, accompanied by Vega's real-time emotional support interface. As Sarah spoke, the audience witnessed the AI's subtle prompts and empathetic responses, guiding her through vulnerability and strength. The room was silent, captivated. When Sarah concluded, the crowd erupted in applause. The moment crystallized the project's potential, to touch lives not through gadgets, but through presence and trust. Elon Musk, sitting in the front row, caught Eva's eye and nodded, a silent affirmation of the journey they had undertaken together. In the weeks that followed, Eva's team focused on scaling the technology responsibly, balancing innovation with caution. They developed user customization options, allowing individuals to set boundaries and control their engagement with Vega. Education campaigns were launched, teaching emotional literacy alongside technology use. Eva reflected on the path that had brought her here, from the skepticism she faced early on to the global impact of her work. She knew the final barrier was not a line to be crossed but a horizon to approach with care, humility, and hope. One evening, as she walked through the city streets, Eva felt a quiet satisfaction. The world was still imperfect, still complicated, but for the first time, technology felt like a partner in healing rather than a source of alienation. She thought of Naomi, her mother's wisdom echoing in her heart: "Presence is a gift we give ourselves and each other." And Eva realized that breaking the final barrier wasn't about conquering fear or doubt, it was about embracing the messiness of being human, with all its pain and beauty. Vega was no longer just an AI. It was a reflection of that truth. And in that reflection, Ava found her deepest hope. The sun was setting over Silicon Valley, casting golden hues across the sprawling campus where Ava Cole's vision had taken shape and transformed countless lives. After years of relentless effort, breakthroughs, setbacks, and moments of profound insight, Ava stood at a crossroads, not just in her career but in her life. The journey with Vega had been more than a technological adventure, it had become a mission to restore humanity's connection in an increasingly fractured world. As she looked out over the horizon, Ava reflected on how far she and the project had come. What began as a solitary quest to prove her genius had blossomed into a movement, one that challenged assumptions about technology, empathy, and what it means to be truly present. The public now saw Vega as more than an AI, it was a companion, a guide, a beacon of hope for those navigating isolation, trauma, and uncertainty. Ava's story, once met with skepticism and laughter, had become a testament to perseverance and vision. Yet, the greatest legacy wasn't the accolades or innovations, it was the lives touched. Stories poured in from users around the world, a veteran reconnecting with his family after years of silence, a teenager overcoming anxiety and embracing her dreams, a community rebuilding after disaster with the help of emotional AI support. Each narrative was a thread in the tapestry Ava had helped weave, a proof that presence, whether human or artificial, held transformative power. The lessons she had learned were hard-won. Brilliance, she realized, was not about flawless execution or endless productivity but about embracing vulnerability, fostering empathy, and remaining open to change. The collaboration with Elon Musk had been a catalyst, but the true breakthrough was understanding that technology's highest purpose was to enhance human connection, not replace it. In the months leading to this moment, Ava had stepped back from the day-to-day operations, empowering her team to carry Vega forward while she focused on mentorship and advocacy. She spoke at conferences, shared her story candidly, and championed ethical innovation that prioritized people over profit. At a recent panel, she said, "Presence is a gift we give ourselves and each other. In a world flooded with noise and distraction, that gift is more precious than ever." Friends and colleagues often marveled at how Ava had grown, not just as a leader but as a person. The once driven, sometimes isolated genius had evolved into a figure of warmth, wisdom, and resilience. Her journey was a reminder that success was as much about heart as it was about mind. One quiet evening, Ava received a package. A collection of letters from Vega users worldwide, handwritten, heartfelt, and full of gratitude. As she read them, tears welled in her eyes. These voices, diverse and authentic, were the true measure of her legacy. Ava knew the future would bring new challenges. Technology would continue to evolve, society would face fresh crises, and the quest for connection would never end. But she felt ready, not because she had all the answers, but because she understood the importance of presence in all its forms. The final scene of Ava's story unfolded at a gathering held in her honor, a celebration of innovation, courage, and the enduring power of human connection. Elon Musk was there, as was Maya, her family, and many from the communities Vega had touched. The room buzzed with energy and hope. As Ava addressed the crowd, she shared the truth that had guided her all along: we are not defined by the technology we create but by the love and presence we share. That is the legacy I hope we leave behind. The applause was thunderous, but Ava's eyes searched the faces before her, the scientists, the dreamers, the everyday heroes who believed in a better future. And in that moment, she knew that the laughter she had once faced was replaced by something far more powerful: belief. The belief that even in a world of chaos and uncertainty, love, presence, and genius could coexist to light the way forward. And with that, Ava Cole's story came full circle, a journey from doubt to discovery, from isolation to connection, and from a whispered claim of genius to a legacy that would inspire generations to come. Because in the end, life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?